7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And hello once again, Pacer Nation, and welcome to Inside Pacer Nation. I'm Marcus Johnson, joined as always by Jordan Phillips, and we're going to take you inside all the Pacer sports you know and love, starting with basketball, women's basketball. I believe that's what we decided on for today's episode.
That sounds about right, honestly, so why don't we just go ahead and jump right in.
Basketball has been a pretty tough season on the Pacers, pretty much a brand new team from last year. But as time has gone on, they've started to look a little bit better. One of the main things that I want to point out with the basketball team is they seem to have very slow starts, and they pick it up as time goes on, and they're able to play with their opponents, but it takes them a little while to get going. Your thoughts?
Well, it's not necessarily so much a slow start as it is they're just unable to keep a pace going consistently throughout the game. I mean, you look at the Columbus State game from a couple of nights ago. They started out really hot. I believe there was at one point they were up 20-9. I think was the score at one point going into the second quarter, and then in that quarter, Columbus State put up 24 points to USC Aiken's 7. I mean, that's just, you can't have that kind of a quarter and expect to win basketball games. And then again, USC Aiken came out in the third quarter and outscored them in that quarter. I believe it was 11-7. So they kind of picked things back up again. And then in the fourth quarter, it was the same story, a lopsided score in favor of Columbus State. So I wouldn't say that it's so much an inability to get a hot start, but it's more so just they haven't been able to keep a consistent pace. It's been consistency in their play that's kind of been their Achilles heel this year.
Okay, that is a fair analogy or analysis of all of that. I mean, once this team, again, they're young, they're very young, as we've said, I don't know how many times on this show is they're young, but they're starting to, you can see it, they're starting to get better. They're not making nearly as many mistakes as they once were, and it doesn't help that they're missing one of their largest forces on the court, in Emily Waters, who could just camp out underneath the basket and just keep popping in two.
Yeah, and I mean they've been going through injuries all season long and just issues like of that nature. But I mean, even through all of that adversity, they've done well to gel and kind of get things going. But they haven't been able to stretch it out over long periods of time. I mean, they're getting excellent performances from players like Kyrie Chandler, who, I mean, she's usually good for double digits in points every game. She's just a talented player like that. And, I mean, she was an excellent find for Coach Mark Miller over the offseason, and she's done her part definitely to keep this team together. I mean, she's a great ball distributor. She does really well with her shooting. She leads the team in points per game. I mean, she's just a fantastic player.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing her paired up with her. It's kind of a shame that we can't see her paired up this year with Kay Farah. She was an absolute dominant force on the court her freshman year, but sadly we lost her before the season even began to injury, and that, I'm pretty sure that plays a bit of a part in why their record isn't as great as it should be.
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, whenever you lose the PBC Freshman of the Year to injury for the entire season, your record's going to suffer. I mean, Kay Farah made an impact on this team immediately. As soon as she stepped on the court last season, I mean, she opened a lot of eyes and put a lot of eyes on herself last season. And, I mean, again, losing her all season long has definitely been a hindrance for this team, but it's not something that they haven't been able to overcome in some areas. But, I mean, all it's going to do, getting her back, is going to make this team so much better. And you look at what this team has done, and I mean, they've had a lot of close games, a lot of close calls here, single-digit losses up and down the board, and you think, man, if they could have had a player like Kay Farah or Emily Waters on the floor at that point, imagine how that would have turned out differently. This team, I mean, the expectations for this season, nobody really knew where they were. I mean, it was a brand new team and nobody really had any idea about them. But I think next season, this is a team that's definitely going to be a threat in the PVC. I think they have a lot of talent coming back, and I think that this team can make a lot of noise next season.
Well, one of the things that a lot of people look at stats to tell you how good a team is and how good a team will perform, but that's not the whole picture. Also mentality, your how you walk into games, how you walk out of games. And one of the things that I've noticed is, a lot of times we'll go in, wait for for coach to get finished with after the game and everything, talking with them, giving a speech, and then we'll bring them back to post game. And a lot of times, as the players are walking back, they don't look defeated. Even if they have just lost, they do not look defeated. They don't have what's called a defeatist mentality.
Yep.
And I've seen plenty of teams out there that, they just lose, and they just go into the game like, well, we're gonna lose anyway. Who gives a crap about it?
Yeah.
But these these girls, they don't do that. They look like they're going out there and saying, hey, let's go ahead, give it our all, have fun doing it, and if we win, great. We lose, hey, we got another game tomorrow, or we got another game in 2 days.
Yeah.
And I like that about them. I feel like that kind of mentality is going to really benefit them, especially next year when I think they're going to really start winning games more so than losing games.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you on that. I mean, this team, every game they come out and they have smiles on their faces. They're ready to go. They're ready to play, and they're ready to show that, just because their record may not be the best in the world, that they're giving up. They go out and they play every game as hard as they possibly can, and they've done a good job at keeping that pace up all season long. And I mean, that's something that's definitely gotten them to this point. I mean, they have a good mentality, and that's a good thing for going into next season.
And speaking of, that kind of mentality and everything like that, and support has been huge for basketball in terms of getting the people out there. And I've noticed the past few home games there has been a larger crowd out there for the women's game. And a lot of times what we'll see happen is people will start trickling in around the second half. And no, people are actually starting to trickle in around, they're not there at the beginning of the game, but they're coming in late first quarter, early second quarter, and hey, that's pretty good. These girls are now starting to get more support. And I could kind of attribute that to their mentality. You walk in there and you're not expecting a team that's going to go out there and lose. You're expecting a team to go out there and, hey, they could win this.
Absolutely. They have a very infectious energy on the floor, and I mean, that's a good thing. It's a good sign. I mean, all things are looking up for this team, and they have nowhere to go but up. I mean, this team can only get better, and that's got to be an encouraging thing for Coach Mark Miller. And I mean, we've spoken to him many times throughout the season, and he has the same mentality. He never seems dejected. I mean, he always says, we have a chance to win every single basketball game we go out there and play. We just have to play for all 40 minutes. That's been his mentality all season long. Every time we've talked to him, either after the game or on Pacer Sports Live, I mean, he always has that mentality and that approach to things. And this is a team that once they get all those pieces back, once they get everybody back on the floor and healthy and ready to go, this is going to be a team that is a threat in the PBC.
Oh yeah, most certainly, and I am looking forward to it. But again, there's a lot of work to be done in order to get to where we want them to be, and we're coming towards the end of the season right now. But there are a couple of big matchups still left to go for women's basketball. That is the wrong page.
Well, I can tell you they've got the homecoming game against Lander this Saturday, 5:30 p.m. here at the Convocation Center, and then they also play Augusta University in Augusta. That will be this next Wednesday night, also at 5:30. That will be at Christenberry Fieldhouse in Augusta. And if I'm not mistaken, the final game of the season is Francis Marion. Oh,
well, Young Harris is the last one on February the 24th, 1:30. That will be in Aiken. But also come out. I want tell people to come out to the if they can come out to the Lander game. It's not that far of a drive. It's a little over an hour, maybe 2 hours, depending on how slow or fast you drive.
It's gonna be here. It's going to be here in Aiken. It's homecoming.
Oh, it is in Lander. Oh, I'm losing my... Definitely come out to the Lander game. I can't read.
It's homecoming,
That's me. Look, I've been out of school for a while, okay? So definitely come out to the Lander game because it's homecoming. And that's also going to be... I feel like that's going to be a good game because the last time Pacers met Lander, which actually was in Lander, Pacers won that game.
They did. The Pacers pulled out a big, what many consider an upset win against Lander. They won 66-64, I believe was the final in that game. Ooh, nailed it.
It was a buzzer beater.
It was a beautiful game for the Pacers, and I mean, then they've got Augusta, who they, soundly defeated here in the, across the river matchup. So they'll have that matchup next, and that's going to be in Augusta. So you should definitely make the drive. That's not a very far drive, about 45 minutes to get to Christenberry Fieldhouse from Aiken. That's a drive you should definitely make. It's going to be an exciting match. Those two teams always bring it every time they play each other. Oh,
yeah, and the last game, Pacers came away with the W here at the Convocation Center. So Augusta's going to be looking for that... looking for the revenge, and women are going to look for the series sweep. That's always nice. And, of course, as we said earlier, women's basketball's final game will be the 24th at 1:30 p.m. That will be here in Aiken. So come on out to that one and cheer them on as they close out their season. And as we close out women's basketball, we move on into men's basketball. Now, men's basketball has been very interesting this year. They have had ups and downs, and right now they're coming on some ups. Now they did just lose their most recent matchup. That was against UNC Pembroke, but
the number one team in the conference.
Number one team in the conference and ranked number 24 in the nation. So you lose to a team like that, it's not unexpected. And I think the only way that Pembroke is going to go down in conference play in the tournament possibly is if they just have a slip up, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a couple of big men on that team that are all American caliber players. I mean, that is a strong team. I mean, all up and down the floor, they are a talented roster. And so the Pacers, I mean, they kept things close there for a while, kind of slipped away from them there at the end, but I mean, they actually went into halftime with the lead. I believe it was a 2-point lead.
Yeah, 86 to 74 was the final score of that. But going into halftime with a lead on a ranked team is very good. It's honestly very good.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, this team is one that just has talent. This, referring to the Pacers now, is just a lineup that has talent up and down the roster. I mean, guys coming off the bench are just. I mean, you got guys like Austin Grimes coming off the bench that is offering quality minutes every single time he steps out on the floor. Step up breakout players like Faison Brach and even Marcus Terry, who we didn't really know much about coming into this season. He was redshirted last year. Didn't really know how he was going to fit into the scheme of things, but he's done fantastic. And going back to Faison Brach, man, he is just fantastic. Gets you all those hustle stats you want. He rebounds. He can get steals. You know, he's good at the free throw line. He can hit three-pointers. He's a tenacious defender, man. He does it all.
And I want to go into a little more depth on guys like that. What I do during the basketball games, working the cameras and everything like that, I have the opportunity to go around and talk with people. And one of the guys I was talking with was, of course, the athletic director, Jim Hurley. And he was saying that, just sitting there and watching guys like Rob Hill. Rob Hill is such a physical presence on the course. He's 6'10", 240 or something like that. I don't have the official stats on him. I could probably find it if I really dug deep, but it's not what I'm worried about. What I want to talk about Rob Hill is his ability to play all over the court. You see him playing just fantastic defense, setting up blocks and camping out under the basket, waiting for that rebound, and he does that in the offensive zone too. And in the last game that they played against Columbus State, he had a double-double, and it could have been a triple-double had it not been for some foul trouble that the team had gotten. And had it not been for that, he would have had a triple-double in blocks, steals, blocks, rebounds, and points, because he came away with double digits in points too.
I believe it was 13 points, 14 rebounds, and 6 blocks, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, in the Columbus State game. I mean, he was just an absolute monster in that game.
And not only him, but somebody else that we were talking about was Faison Brach, actually. Faison Brach, he just had a highlight reel dunk, which was absolutely fantastic in the Georgia Southwestern game. If you haven't checked it out, you have to check it out. It's had over 17,000 views. I mean, it's just beautiful. He comes out of nowhere, through 3 defenders, grabs the ball, one-handed dunk right into the basket. Just an absolutely stellar highlight. And that's the thing about him. He doesn't stand out too much, but he gets the job done. He's sneaky, and that's what I like about him.
Well, here's the thing about Faison Brach. I was actually on the broadcast during that play, and I'm really glad that Chip Herring, our one of our play-by-play guys, was there doing it with me, because once Faison rose up and dunked it, I couldn't even say anything. I had my hands on my head and my mouth was open. I was just like, wow, I cannot believe that he just made that play. It was fantastic, and Chip did a great job, covering for me while I stared dumbly in stunned amazement, But I mean, Faison Brach's been doing things like that all season long. But going back briefly to Rob Hill, as we were talking about him, in that UNC Pembroke game, he had 18 rebounds, which in USCA's Division II history is the 3rd most all time.
I mean, that's just showing you how valuable the guy is, and he's only a sophomore. He still has 2 more years. And, I was sitting, again, talking with Jim, sitting there saying, if this guy doesn't get an all-conference nod this year, he better be getting it the next 2 years in a row, because this guy he's just doing a phenomenal job.
And that's the thing about Rob, is he's one of those centers. Some centers you'll see who are really big, bulky, like big muscles kind of guy. He's not one of those guys. He's really long. That's what makes him so efficient at those rebounds. His arms he's got these long arms. They're ridiculous, and he can just go up above everybody else. And you always see him with his hands, and he's always able to get those rebounds because of that length that he has on the floor. I mean, that's what's so special about him is he has that ability, and that's what makes him so great at getting those putbacks that we always see him doing on the offensive side of things. He's great at those putback dunks and layups that he does underneath the basket.
And I feel like I'm a broken record when I say this, but whenever he gets that dunk, that slam dunk, and just kind of hangs there from the rim for a few seconds, it really invigorates the crowd, invigorates the team, gets them pumped up, and that's another way he contributes to the team. But the final athlete that I really want to talk about is Marcus Terry. And here's the thing. I was a little skeptical about Marcus Terry after the first few games. He came in, he was pretty highly touted as a JUCO transfer, and we were expecting, sorry, not JUCO transfer.
He was Division I. He actually came from
Division
Presbyterian,
I.
yeah.
I'm losing my mind. I'm sorry. I'm losing my mind. But yeah, he transferred in. And it was a little concerned because his play wasn't what we were expecting, and I was like, no, please don't tell me where you have a bust. And then as the time went on, he got better and better and better, and now he's just lighting up the court.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's just a monster. His three-point shot is beautiful. That's one of the things that makes him so special is he's a dead accurate from three-point range. And I mean, he's not only there, he can also do some slash and get in, drive through the lane, make those plays there. I mean, he's just a great offensive presence out there for the Pacers. He does so much on the offensive side of the ball, especially when it comes to his scoring ability. I mean, he averages 18.5 points per game. He averages 14.2 points per game. Second only to Donnell Dean on the team in points per game. And Donnell Dean, that's another player. I mean, it seems like every time we watch him, he's putting up 20 points. 35 points twice this season. I mean, that's a massive total. And he's done fantastic work for the Pacers as well as Marcus Terry, as you pointed out. That's another player who can, really do a great job. He's kind of the opposite of Marcus Terry. He shoots threes a little bit, but what makes him so special is his ability to drive through and slash to the basket. And I mean, once he gets inside, those big guys have so much trouble defending him because he's so small. Any amount of contact they put on him is going to result in a foul, so they have to play soft defense on him, and that just gives him a wide open look to the basket.
Oh yeah, and it's hopefully going to really propel them forward as we come in towards the end of the season. Only a few more games left, and before we go into those upcoming games, have a look at the conference records right now. And UNC Pembroke is sitting there in the top spot, 17-2 overall. 17-2 in the Peach Belt Conference, 21-4 overall. They are just on fire right now. They sit at the top spot, but USC Aiken is sitting there in the number 4 seed in the conference as of right now, a 10-9 record in conference play, tied with Augusta actually in those regards, and they have one more game against them in Augusta, so that'll be a big one. But their overall record, they are 13-10, so they're not doing too shabby themselves in their overall standing. Anytime you can be over 500 is pretty good, and of course they've had that recent loss, but before that they had a 3-game winning streak after some really tough losses in overtime, the overtime losses on the road, and the really close games that they one bounce went their way. I mean, looking at it, they had the Augusta loss, which really hurt. It was a 95-79 loss at home. And then they went to Young Harris. They lost 83-81 in overtime, 86-82 at Francis Marion in overtime, and then a 1-point loss at North Georgia, 80-79. But that didn't discourage them because they came back on February the 7th and blew Flagler out of the water, 91-74. Georgia Southwestern, 84-69, and Columbus State, 83-62. Really good, solid wins coming right back and winning them at home, which was something they were having trouble doing earlier on in the season. They're finally able to defend their house and still play pretty quality basketball on the road, and that'll hopefully propel them forward, especially in tournament play, which most likely will not be here at the Convocation Center.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's important for them to get those big road wins that they've been getting throughout the season, as you mentioned earlier. I mean, and they've shown the ability to win on the road, which is important, especially, as you mentioned, because the conference tournament most likely will not be here at USC Aiken.
And their next matchup will be homecoming. That is at home against Lander. This time I get it right.
Attaboy.
That'll be on Saturday, February the 17th, 7:30. And it should be a fun one. I remember when I went to school here, homecoming games were always really pumped up and really exciting. And we played Lander a lot at homecoming. I think my was it was either my last year or second to last year we played them at homecoming. I can't remember exactly, but it was fun. And then there's the big game against Augusta, the big rematch, chance for Pacers to right some wrongs that were committed here at the Convocation Center, also known as a loss.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the same with the women, the Young-Harris matchup, which will be on February the 24th on Saturday at 3:30. That's the final game as we move on into conference play. And I expect if the Pacers can play hot, if they can, I feel like if they can win these last 3 games and win them decisively, they could make a decently deep trip into the conference play.
Yeah, and I mean it's all about that momentum, as you mentioned. That's something Mark Vanderslice, the head coach, has been harping on all season. He says momentum has no best friend. You have to make your own momentum, and I think that's something that this team is talented enough to do for themselves here at the end of the season.
Yeah, and we really look forward to seeing how the playoffs pan out and how the rest of the end of the season pans out for Pacer basketball. Move on into tennis now. Tennis, after in our last episode, tennis had just played the defending national champions of the NAIA crowd, and they were beat pretty soundly, sad to say, but that was to be expected. As we said earlier, they like to play a very strong opponent at the start of the season, so the rest of the season doesn't seem as difficult, and so far that's been the case as they are on a 3-match win streak. Both men and women's tennis have been doing pretty well out there on the court.
Well, women's is 3-1 since that game, and men are 2-1 since that opening matchup against Georgia Gwinnett. But yeah, both teams, ever since that first match, it seems that Coach Steve Dom's tactic of starting the season out with a real big hitter, and kind of easing into the rest of the season has worked miracles for them. I mean, they're doing fantastic. I mean, they had a match postponed. Wingate was a match that was scheduled for earlier this week or last week, I believe. That's been rescheduled until April, and so the teams both have been on a nice slide, they've been on the uptake since that opening loss. Kayla Calvert is currently the PBC Player of the Week, representing women's tennis. She is 3-1 this season, and in matches where she's the number 1 seed, she's 1-0. So I mean that's got to be encouraging for Coach Steve Dom, and it's also the 3rd time in USC Aiken history that the Pacers have had a women's tennis Player of the Week for the PBC. So that's a big honor for not only women's tennis but also for Kayla Calvert herself. So that's got to be encouraging for the team to see that they are not going unnoticed here in the PBC. Kayla Calvert getting the season started off the way she wanted to really well,
and they're also getting some support out there. I mean, granted, their first match was the home one, which they lost, but there was a lot of people out there. The rest of them have been on the road, but they're getting from what I've seen in post game, they do their own post game shows and everything like that, and they get a lot of views on their post games.
They do.
But I guess when you win, people tend to be more interested when you win than when you lose. And hey, a three match win streak, that's always nice. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they can really produce for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
If you have any other numbers of things that we can look forward to.
And unfortunately, statistically, tennis is kind of hard to have, statistics other than wins and losses, so we don't really have anything there. But I mean, the both teams take on Anderson, which is a really big region game. They always have a good team, does Anderson. I mean, and regionally, this is a very important game. Currently, the men are 2-0 in region play, and the women are 3-0 in region play. So this win, should they pick it up here for both teams, could be huge in the region rankings later on in the season. And that match is coming up on Saturday, and that will be here in Aiken. So why not come out, support them, see what you can, go check out some tennis. I mean, it's a fun sport. It's really, really fast-paced, really back and forth. It's hard to keep up with at times, but if you've got the eyes for it, it's worth coming out and seeing.
It is a fun sport. I can attest to that. So be sure to come out for that. But we'll move on into softball now. Softball, which we just got finished covering one of their games, which was just a real tough loss, but against a very good defensive Newberry team. Any observations that you'd like to point out before we move on to my observations?
Well, we'll talk first off about Caroline Cockerel, the freshman pitcher for the Pacers. I mean, she's looked fantastic this season. She had a complete game shutout earlier on in the season against the team escapes me at the moment, but she had that earlier, and then today she pitched against Newberry, had a 2-run complete game. So I mean, she's done well so far. Currently has a 2.30 ERA and a 2-2 record on the season. She's thrown 3 complete games, and I mean, she's done great. She's gone the distance in every single game she started this year, and her kind of emergence here as one of the young, freshman pacers for Jerry Snyder. It's got to be encouraging for him to see that, he's got her as a weapon, and he's got her as a weapon for the next 4 years. I mean, she's doing fantastic work out there in the circle for the Pacers.
Yeah, she's had a lot of pitches that she's had to work through too, but she's been pretty efficient, throwing a lot of strikes and getting a lot of good movement on her pitches, getting players to chase after it, and working her way out of jams. Especially in the last game, there were a few real tough, tense situations that she got herself into, and she managed to work her way out of it. But another thing I wanted to point out was defensively, the Pacers looked like a pretty solid team, especially that left side of the infield. Mm-hmm. There've been some fantastic plays over there, and a couple that you can't really fault them for. It was just too good base running or too good of hitting or anything like that. But that left side of the infield has been pretty stellar all season long, according to our SID. As I was pointing it out, like, hey, that looks pretty good out there. And he's like, well, yeah, they've been pretty good the entire season.
Well, absolutely, and I mean, I've been present for every home softball game so far this season, and I can agree with the SID Brent Hager on that one 100%. They've been running something of a platoon with Jessica Stanley and Kat St. Peter at third base, and man, both of them have just been showing off their reflexes all season long, making beautiful plays out there at third, throwing runners out at first and making it look easy on plays that should be, safe easily. But I mean, they're doing great jobs. Both of them are doing fantastic out there, really showing off what they can do and making it hard for Coach Snyder to decide who can I play both of these guys in the same game. But unfortunately, there's only one third base. But I mean, you've also got Deja Robinson, who's doing fantastic work at shortstop, the freshman. She's been fantastic defensively this season. She has got a cannon at shortstop.
I was gonna say she made a beautifully accurate throw to first base from the outfield grass the other day, and that was just it didn't look flashy, but you could tell it was an excellent defensive play, just right on the money, a strike right down the middle to first. And yeah, I mean, she's doing well. Everybody's doing well. Like Kat St. Peter, she's got great reflexes because she plays short, well, not shortstop, but she plays in at third base, and she's able to snag those balls before they get past her and before they hit her, more importantly, and still get the throw over to first base in time, even after bobbling it a little bit every now and again.
And, we were talking about breakout seasons, for the freshman Caroline Cockerel. Why not talk about Kat St. Peter and a little bit more in depth? The sophomore hitting 400 so far this season. She's got 8 hits in 20 at-bats. I mean, she has been on fire at the plate to start things off. And, I mean, that's a big accomplishment for her now. She has more hits this season than she had at bats last season. That's a big thing. I mean, she's really coming into her own for the Pacers, and I mean that's encouraging. I mean, that shows you that you have a lot of talent on this roster and players that can break out at any time.
And also looking at, if you want to look at standout players, Hannah Price is still performing just outstanding. She's an outstanding performer. Before I go into her though, Kat St. Peter batting 400 on the year. That's pretty good to start off a season. And Caroline Cockerel batting 364 on the year. But Hannah Price, a 516 batting average. She can keep that up. That's something else to say the least. But she leads the teams in hits with 16. She leads the team in doubles with 3. She's the only one that's homered so far with 1, and she has the lead in RBIs in 9.
And that homer was a grand slam here on opening weekend. I mean, Hannah Price is just, there's no other way to say it. She is mashing at the plate right now. I mean, there's nothing anybody can do to solve her. She's just getting hits at will.
And hopefully nobody will solve her, because I want to see those numbers continue, at least not drop too much lower. I mean, I don't want to see them get below 450. How's that sound?
I mean, she's been doing fantastic work for the Pacers this season. I mean, she's having a PBC Player of the Year caliber year. Of course, this is early in the season, so anything can happen. But at the moment, she looks fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, they don't look too bad. They're sitting at 4-6 on the year as of right now, which isn't terrible. It's not a terrible record. They're 4-4 at home, 0-2 away. 4-4 at home, 0-2 away. I know you just gotta keep buckling down and going in there. And we were talking with Courtney Strauss after the game, and she was saying one of the things we probably need to do is be a little more patient at the plate, take a few more pitches, and that's one of in the last game. Again, going back to Newberry because it's still fresh in our minds, but their opposing pitching threw 69 pitches, and about 52 or 53 of them were strikes. So That's
the kind of
efficiency.
team. Yeah, that's the kind of team they were contending with, and not only was their pitching phenomenal, but their defense was incredible too. Was that Newberry team, the center fielder and the right fielder for them? I mean, it's like nothing.
They stole about 5 hits away in that game. Pacers managed 4, but they stole.
Yeah,
they stole 5.
It's like there was a vacuum out there, for those guys in the outfield, and so
there were at least 2 or 3 diving plays that were robbing them of extra base hits.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that you look at the Pacers record, and you see 4-6. I mean, it doesn't necessarily sound that impressive, but then you think, okay, the 2 Newberry games, the first one ended 3-1, the second one 2-1. Then you go back to Limestone, the first game in that series ended, or in that doubleheader was 5-4. I mean, so you're looking at close games here that could have gone either way with an extra hit here. One of those Newberry defenders finally lets a ball, touch the ground here or there, and suddenly it's a different ball game. And that's all it is. It's all about, getting those opportune hits, just hitting with people on base, getting guys on base. And I think this softball team is definitely going to be, they're going to figure things out. And they've got a lot of talent on that team, and all it takes is just one extra hit a game, and it's a different ball game.
I mean, it really wouldn't surprise me that I have no doubt that they'll finish with at least a 500 record this year, and they can make a run in the tournament. They've done it before. They were their first number 7 seed to make it all the way to the conference tournament final. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, why not try it again, except this time be a little higher seed, maybe.
And, I mean, in this team, their pitching has done phenomenal so far this season as well. As a team, they currently have a 3.02 ERA, and that's pretty darn good for this team so far this season between Caroline Cockerel, Lindy Dorgan, and Chandler Terrapin. I mean, they've done fantastic work out there for the Pacers, and really all it takes is just that one extra hit here with a runner on second, and suddenly it's a different ball game. And, I mean, eventually the Pacers are going to start getting those, and this team's going to turn things around really quickly.
Well, they still have a few hitters that are just they're being quiet right now. They're taking their time warming up, and then they're gonna catch fire. Once those I'm not gonna call them out because I like them, but once they start getting hot, this team is going to really turn things around, I think.
Absolutely, this team could explode at any moment, and all we're waiting for is that one spark.
Yep, so that's softball for you. We're going to move on into baseball now. I believe we got one more sport after that. Golf.
Yep.
So let's actually go into golf instead of baseball. Let's shift the order around.
Yes.
Baseball's going to take a while.
Yeah, so, golf, again, always the national contender here for the Pacers. I mean, they've been doing fantastic work for years and years and years. Coach Carlisle does a fantastic job for the Pacers. And, they've got a lot of talent on that team. And they've got a lot of high expectations this year. And so, they're going to start their season up on February 18th. That's this Sunday at the Newberry Invitational on Kiowa Island in South Carolina. A nice little island location for the golf team to open things up. I'm kind of jealous. I could use an island vacation myself.
I wouldn't mind that, but yeah, they just also a little something to note. They just received their jewelry for winning the Peach Belt Conference Championship last year. So congratulations to all of the golf team on that, and let's hope you bring home another one this year, maybe a little bit more too.
Absolutely. I mean, they've got guys like Johnson Holiday and Axel Ostenson. I mean, they're just fantastic players that are potential PGA names once they leave here. Graduate. I mean, it's gonna be an exciting spring semester for this golf team, and we could be looking at another national contender.
I really would love another national championship to come USC Aiken's way. I think I was talking with you about this. When is USC Aiken gonna bring home another national championship? And the golf team always has that opportunity to do so. But let's focus on winning the Peach Belt first, and then we can move on to the region. Then we move on to the national championship. Absolutely,
and this team is one of those teams that could do a lot of damage. I mean, they have a lot of potential, a lot of young guys on that team, as well as the veteran leaders. I mean, this team, I can see them making a lot of noise in the PBC, the region, and the nation.
All right, so let's now move on into baseball. Baseball just coming off of a big road win, their first road game of the season against Wingate. 9-5 was the final score of that. Christian Aragon finished off the game with a 2-0 record. Now he got the win, and Daniel Wiggins managed the save in that game. It was not too bad statistically either for the Pacers. Joey Smithers continuing on leading the team with a 483 batting average, which is, pretty stellar numbers. And it's nice to see that Connor Durden as well is picking up where he left off before he had to sit down with injury last year. He's batting 360 on the year. And going back to Smithers, 2 home runs for 11 RBIs. He's doing work out there, and he doesn't look like a big guy, but he's actually got some muscle on him now. He bulked up a little bit over the offseason. As I was talking with former Pacer baseballer Luke Westerberg, saying that he really did bulk up in the offseason, and it's really showing. And his defensive play out there in left field has been pretty good too. He's made the transition from being that backup second baseman to left fielder almost flawlessly, and taking over for Mitchell Price, who he in and of himself was an excellent outfielder.
Yeah, I mean, and he was another one of those guys. I mean, he could hit it out of the park at any point in time. Mitch just had that finesse out there in the left field. I mean,
he was a great all-around player,
fantastic defender, great hitter. He could get on base, and once he got on base, he was always a threat to steal. I mean, just a fantastic player all around for the Pacers, and it's good to see that they've found someone who can fit into that role so nicely in Smithers.
Yeah, and. Again, going on to Connor Durden again, at 360 batting average, leads the team in home runs with 4 of them, and he came so close to another one in that game this past weekend, where he hit one to dead center field, and we're like, is it a home run? Is he out? And then there was confusion, and the base running error happened, and it would have been a home run because the ball did go over the fence, but because on the base pass he ran past another player, he ended up getting called out, but he still managed 2 runs scored, and the way they officially scored that is he had a single, 3 unassisted, so that's how it was scored, but he still managed the RBI, it still counts as a hit, still helps his batting average out, But, I mean, you feel bad for the guy because he just so close to getting another home run, but then a little miscommunication on the base path ended up hurting him there. But their batting has been pretty good, I have to say. I was a little concerned coming into the season with how they were going to perform overall, but their bats have performed the way I would expect them to. They're shelling their opponents when they need to shell them, and they're getting the timely hits when they need to get them. I mean, sure, some of the games are close, but they're high-scoring games as well. Pitching has been an interesting development as the year went on. Christian Aragon is 2-0 on the season, which that's good. That's good. I didn't really know what we would be expecting from Christian Aragon. He was a pitcher last year. He did pretty well, and this year he seems to be following along in the same suit. He's not your staff ace, but he's not a guy that you're like, oh well, we just need to throw this game away, so let's send out Aragon. No, he's a good guy to have in your rotation. Give your other guys a break. Get out there and say, hey, we can get the win. We got Aragon on the mound. Let's just do this.
Yeah.
But one of the guys I really want to talk about is Zach Rayfuse, who's started out the season on fire.
Yeah, well, I've heard a lot about Zach Rayfuse. Unfortunately for myself, I haven't been able to get out to any baseball games this year. I've been, busy with this or that. Tell me the story about this kid. I mean, I'm hearing fantastic things from everybody that will, everybody with a voice that enjoys Pacer baseball has been telling me about Zach Rayfuse.
Well, let me go ahead and just give you his stat line, and I'll let you be able to figure this out for yourself. So he's had 2 starts. He's 1-0. He's pitched 10 innings, allowed 4 hits, 2 walks, 13 strikeouts, and 0 runs.
That tells me the whole story right there, man. I got to get out here to see this guy.
We're looking at him like he's the real deal. He looks like he's going to be our next Joey Benitez. We're getting some head shakes, but I mean, he's pitching pretty well right now. I have 0 complaints about his time on the mound, and I've wanted to get him in for a post game, especially after his very first game where he just had a stellar job. He sadly didn't get the win, but I mean, that was just unfortunate circumstances that he came out before the Pacers started scoring their runs, but they ended up having him running. I'm like, why are you making this guy running? He just pitched a solid game, and you're making him run in the outfield?
Oh, that hurts.
But I mean, one of these days we're going to get him on the post game because I have a feeling he'll pick up a few more wins. He will definitely be our staff ace. I mean, he's just doing an absolutely fantastic job. And looking at Christian Aragon, his numbers aren't as great as we would like. He has a 7.42 ERA, 3 starts, 3 appearances, but a 2-0 record. That's pretty good. 13.1 innings pitched and 13 strikeouts. So he's right up there with Rayfuse in terms of strikeouts. Couple other players of note, Mitch Spence, his numbers are lying to you. I will say that right now. One of the problems is he's out there for too long. And I mean, I'm going to catch some flack for that, but Mitch Spence is a good pitcher to have come in and try to close out your games. He's a great one-inning pitcher. He will shut down in the lineup. He came in the game where he gave up a lot of runs in this game, but he came in with the bases loaded and 1 out. He only allowed 1 run to score. He shut everybody else down. He just comes in and he will get you out of a jam if you need him to get you out of a jam. He will finish off a game if you need him to finish off a game, but he can't go for too long. Now maybe I'm just crazy. But that's my take on Mitch Spence. He's a good pitcher. You got to know how to use him properly.
That's an important kind of pitcher to have. That 1 inning shutdown guy. That's a very big thing for a bullpen to have, and that's a good thing that he is there and available to do that for the Pacers this season. And
another pitcher of note, Daniel Wiggins, who's in the relief effort, actually is tied with Christian Aragon for the lead in wins, even though he hasn't started a game. He's 2-0.
Attaboy. That's what you got to do. You got to come out there and make your pitches.
Yeah, 4 appearances, 2 wins, 1 save, 8.1 innings pitched. 8 hits, 3 runs, 2 of which were earned runs, 1 walk, and 9 strikeouts. So not bad. Not a bad stat line for him. And I feel like that ERA of his will go down a little bit more as the season goes on. But still, 2.16. That's not actually terrible at all.
That's actually fantastic. A 2.16 ERA is pretty good.
And Freddie Beeman, who made the transition to the bullpen, has been doing well. I was a little worried about that, saying how is he going to pitch? But as I was talking with people during the offseason, like, hey, how do you think Freddie's going to do in the season? He's like, oh, he looks actually pretty good. I think that we were wasting his talent by having him in the field. He's a good pitcher, and so far, he doesn't have an ERA, no runs given up, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, that sounds about as good as you could be doing right now if you're him. I mean, he's really showing that we were wasting his talent having him as a 4th outfielder. He's doing fantastic out there on the mound, and that's another pitcher that I'm really excited to see once I'm able to finally get over to the Burt and see a game this season. I'm excited.
Yeah, we'll get you over there eventually.
I've been pushing hard for it.
But unless we have anything else, I want to also talk about Garvin Alston Jr. He's another pitcher that people have been looking at. He's a D1 transfer from Arizona State. And a lot of people expect when you're a D1 transfer to come out swinging or come out pitching, in his case, and do really well. But he's done okay. His ERA is a 4.50, and he's had 2 appearances. 4 innings pitched, 3 hits, 2 runs, 3 hits, 2 runs, two both of which were earned, 8 walks and 6 strikeouts. The problem with his walks was the first game, it was his first game at a new school, so you can expect a little jitters. The second game with a bunch of those walks, the weather wasn't that great. It was pretty rainy, the grip on the ball, but also he had been out there for a long time. He tends to pitch a lot of pitches, so you got to watch his pitch count. That's one I don't like talking about that. I don't like the pitch count rule, but in some cases, and I think in his case, you really do want to watch out for his pitch count.
Yeah.
Because as he progresses through the game, his pitches, his strike zone's gonna all of a sudden be all over the place, and his location will be all over the place, I should say. But I do see him as a pretty good pitcher, because when he came in his last game of relief, he started out really well. He was striking guys out, getting them to ground out with very little trouble. But again, as the game went on, almost like Mitch Spence, you got to watch him. You got to watch how much you throw him, because he'll give you a good solid inning. He might give you 2 good innings, but after that, you may want to think about trying somebody else, if for nothing else, because you don't want to hurt him.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand.
So that about does it for my stat line. What are your opinions on baseball right now? I know you haven't seen too many of the games, but what are your expectations of the team, especially in this upcoming series against Mount Olive?
I think this upcoming series against Mount Olive is going to tell a lot of the story for this team. I think Mount Olive is the toughest competition they've faced all season long. I think it's the real first true test for them, and if they can come away, 3-0, 2-1, winning that amount of games in that series, I think that can really tell us where they're going to go as a team. Now, if they struggle a little bit, go 1-2, well, then that kind of tells you where you may have some weaknesses, where you have some gaps in your game, and that's going to give Kenny Thomas a chance to, adjust his lineup a little bit, see what works and what doesn't. I think we're going to know a lot more about this team than we do now after this weekend. I think this team is a little bit enigmatic at the moment, and I think seeing them go up against a tough region opponent like Mount Olive is really going to show us where they are as a team.
And I mean, looking at the opponents that baseball has played up to this point, they started off the season with Lincoln Memorial. They won the series 2-1. They played Shepherd, who was coming off of a 3-game set with UNC Pembroke, and they lost all 3 of them, and they took that series 2-1. So then moving on into Wingate, who 7-1 on the season now, so they're actually not too bad, and beating them on their home territory, that's actually a good sign for things to come, because we've always been worried about road games for USC Aiken baseball. But again, Mount Olive is a regional contender. They have a chance to go on to win their conference, win their region, possibly playing in the College World Series and all that kind of stuff. And if they can take 2 games, that'll be a huge win. If they only win 1 game, however, then I think we need to start taking a moment and saying, okay, what's wrong?
Yeah, I think this really, I mean, like I said, I think this is a good measuring stick. This weekend series really tells us where this team really is at the moment, and I think that's going to be important for Coach Thomas going forward.
Yeah, and the Mount Olive series isn't the only challenge that they're going to have to face. They do play Francis Marion right after them, a 3-game set. Then they have a 1-game matchup against Emmanuel, and then they play Georgia College, who is a PBC rival, also a regional contending team. Yep. They always put together a good squad. Recently won the Peach Belt Conference in baseball. They're a good team, and that's going to be another measuring stick. And if by then things that need to be fixed haven't been fixed, then we need to start worrying. But right now, we're gonna sit there and we're gonna say, okay, they're 5-2. Things are looking okay. Let's see what we look like against Mount Olive. I'm going to take it 1 game at a time. That's what they always tell you to do. Don't look too far ahead, because then you're going to miss what's right in front of you.
Exactly. But I think this team is going to be okay. I think this weekend series is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to have to try and make it out for a game.
Well, you can come on out later today as they take on Mount Olive. That game will start up at 4:00 p.m. today, and then tomorrow's game will be Saturday at 2 p.m., followed by the series finale Sunday at 1:00 p.m. That is today at 4, tomorrow at 2, and Sunday at 1. Be sure to come out to those games. They should be really exciting. Win, lose, or tie. It's always good to come out for baseball.
Absolutely.
Well, that about does it here from Inside Pacer Nation. For Jordan Phillips, I'm Marcus Johnson. Thank you as always, and have a good one.